doing it in English. We are having kind of this English series. We do it about once a month for the first half of the year. And today we have a very special friend with us. But before I introduce our dear friend, I'm going to ask Antulio, our friend Antulio, to give our initial prayer. Antulio, please.
Sure. So, dear friends, welcome. Let's close our eyes, if you wish, and with joy in our hearts, let's feel the presence of our spiritual mentors, and let's connect the hearts and minds of all of us here under the auspices of fraternity, with the purpose of learning a little bit of spiritual truths and reflect about our own way to Damascus. Now let's involve in our best thoughts of light and love our guest Dan Assisi, that kindly accepted to be here with us today. With the help of God our Father, Jesus our Master, and the spiritual mentors of this group, let's ask permission to start our work today. So be it.
Thank you very much. Thank you so very much, Antulio. I have a couple things here of mine asking for the link. So if anyone on the I don't know, a Patty or anyone, if you could send to Douglas and William the link to the meeting, I would appreciate it. For some reason they cannot find it, and they are eager to join. So again, thank you, Antulio. Let me share, and I would like to introduce our good friend who is here with us. Let's see. Can you see? Can you see what I'm sharing? I hope it's sharing. Let me know.
Yes,
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 Okay.
I
yes,
can
we
see
can
it.
Okay.
see it.
Okay. Okay, Doug. So it's a real pleasure and a blessing to have Dan Assisi with us today. He's a good friend who we met a long time ago in California. I don't want to date myself, but I believe it was over 20 and some years ago. And Dan has been on this road helping talk about spirituality in the US, disseminating the Spiritist movement. And we are deeply, deeply thankful for everything that Dan has done. And today is a happy day for us. So I'm going to introduce Dan, who is going to talk about our road to Damascus, 7 lessons for a life of purpose and meaning. Dan Assisi, he's a doctor in education. He's a master in public administration and a project management professional. He's an award-winning author and internationally celebrated speaker who has delivered hundreds of talks, and I've been lucky enough to be in many of those, and conferences on spirituality in over 60 cities in 4 continents, known for a mix of deep thinking and witty humor, and takes a unique approach of spirituality that is steeped in reason to remind audiences everywhere of our spiritual nature. His long awaited first book, Our Road to Damascus, is available in hardcover paperback and as an ebook, and it is my pleasure to turn the stage and the mic to you, Dan. You are on mute, if I can see there, so it's all yours. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Eduardo, and thank you everyone for having me. There's very, very kind words, but the truth is, your guys are the ones who are doing the hard work out there. I want to congratulate you for the almost 4, right? 3 and a little bit years at Sunrise.
That's right, 3.5.
Yeah, very excited. Thank you so much for having me. It's truly an honor to speak with you. I just hope that not all your activities are early in the morning because you call yourself Sunrise. I hope that not all of you guys are morning people.
Not everybody.
But yeah, but greetings here from California, from San Diego, where it's at 8:30 in the morning. A wonderful way of starting our Sunday, which, by the way, is Palm Sunday. And for many folks who may not be familiar or who may be familiar, Palm Sunday is a symbolic Christian celebration of the entering of Jesus into Jerusalem. towards the end of his passage here with us. So it's a moment of celebration, of reminding that the job is almost done. And I think that is very symbolic for our times too. It's a good reminder that we too shall triumph over our challenges, our COVID challenges, our all kinds of challenges we have out there. But so thank you so much for being here with me today, and for inviting me. I am thrilled to and honored to be with you. And Eduardo was saying and was speaking, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's almost 20 years that we get to know each other. So maybe we should fudge those numbers a little bit, Eduardo. Maybe we should just say that we've known each other for 10 years or something. But thank you so much for having me. I hope to have a conversation with you guys today about a topic that I'm clearly biased about, and I clearly enjoy very much. And that is this incredible transformation that our friend Paul of Tarsus, or the Apostle Paul, has underwent. And we have a presentation here that we are going to share with you guys. Can you see my screen okay? You can, right? As we talk about all that fun stuff, I hope that some of it settles. I hope some of it comes back to us and is meaningful to us. I think that the first thing that I wanna share with you, though, and make sure that that's the elephant in the room, is that this presentation has become a book in a way. And I want to tell you a little bit about the story of the book, because I think that's interesting as well. The book actually came about because I was thinking about how can we best transform ourselves, right? In Spiritism, we have often talked about the importance of changing oneself for the better, and recognizing that as immortal spirits that we are, we should try to and strive to be better every day, a little bit better than we were before, because we know that we're in constant evolution.
Hey, Dan.
And so, yeah.
Very sorry to interrupt you. For some reason, the image is a little blurry for everybody.
Is it blurry?
Yeah.
Let's see if we do something else here. It's coming out blurry, huh?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Oh.
Let's see if there's something else that we can do. Let's see.
Yeah. Don't worry. If it remains that way, just carry on.
Well, I'll do a presentation. I think we have a presentation mode here too, right? If
that I think that may work better. Yes.
Yeah. But sorry, then maybe you have a background on blurry. That's why the image, your image, your face is okay. It's just a background.
Yeah, but if you have a presentation, I think it may work better actually.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that. Let me see here. Can I share my screen? Present now, right?
Yes.
Let's do that. Hold on a second. Let's see if I can do this then. I can swap back here. Present now. My entire screen. Let's see here. Share. It worked last night.
Yep, perfect. Actually, it works very well now. We can see.
All right. So it's actually a blessing for you guys, because that way you don't get to see my face all the time. You can just look at the presentation. But what I was saying, though, is that I wanted to share with you a little bit about. So I was telling you, like, the elephant in the room, that is, I have a book, and I would be obviously honored and thrilled if you read the book. You absolutely don't have to, but I want to share with you how it came about. I was thinking about, how can we become better human beings? How can I become a better human being? And it led me to search for who are the people that have had the greatest transformation, the greatest moral transformation that we know of in recorded history. And two people came to mind, Mary of Magdalene and Paul of Tarsus. And of course, we have a lot more information on Paul of Tarsus. Which is great that we have information on him, but we wish we had more information on Mary Magdalene as well. And so I dove into his life to see what are the changes that he has gone through, and then created a presentation like this one. And then as I spoke to different people in different parts of this wonderful world of ours, every once in a while somebody would say, I like that. Do you have something written about it? And when more than 3 or 4 people kept asking for the same thing, I took it as a nice hint. Maybe I should do this. And the interesting piece is that in the writing of this book, a lot of it came up for myself too. It was a great companion. When I first started writing this, right before COVID hit, it actually was in October of 2019. I was in London at the time. I started writing it. I was in the middle of a career change. I had spent 12 years working for an organization which I love, but I was tired and I needed a new challenge. And I knew that I needed to stop working to kind of figure out what is it that I wanted next. So I took some time to think about my future. I kept Paul as my companion for many months there. And then COVID happened and then the world transformed. And one interesting thing was, even while COVID was with us and all those different things about the world were changing, the topics and the themes about change that the book spoke of, that Paul seemed to be whispering to me, kept being the same. And so I really enjoyed the journey, and it took me about a year to finally publish the book. And during that process, it's become a companion. So when I finished writing the book, it was a bittersweet moment. It was a moment where I was happy that it was done, but at the same time, I felt like I've missed a friend because I've been thinking for it for a while. And so I want to share that a little bit with you because I think it's emblematic of what this presentation is today. Right? If you see there on the screen, I want to share with you something exciting about the book. I haven't told anybody yet. The book has just earned a silver medal at the 2021 Illumination Book Awards. So I'm very excited to say that it has gotten a lovely silver medal there for exemplary Christian thought. And at the same time, I want to share with you an exciting review from Kirkus Reviews, which is one of the most famous book reviews out there, that says that a book that succeeds in the tricky feat of being intriguingly spiritual without being explicitly religious. And I think that summarizes our approach today. Our approach today is to get a Christian story, a story that has been famous for hundreds, right? If not 1,000 years, a story of change about Paul, the apostle, and Paul of Tarsus. But it's really not a religious story. It's really not a story about converting to a faith. It's not really about accepting Jesus in our heart. I think all of that can be there too. But what fascinates me about the story, it's really a story of a person in the middle of a journey in their lives, being faced with new events and changing themselves for the better. And sometimes I think that we forget that. We forget that that Paul started with very humble beginnings. Right. So today, when we look at the Apostle Paul, we see a person who is the apostle of the Gentiles, that is the messenger to everybody who is not Jewish. We see that 13 letters, 13 books out of the 27 books in the New Testament, because I think we are familiar with the idea that the New Testament is made of 27 different books, and 13 of them are attributed to Paul. And another one, the Acts of the Apostles, is written by Luke, who is also his travel companion and also has a lot about his life as well. So if you think about it, exactly half, or a little bit more than half, of the New Testament deals with or comes from Paul. And that's really interesting because we get to learn of Jesus when he's here with us, but after that, we get to learn of Jesus, right? So it becomes while Christ was with us, it was about his religion, his thoughts. When he left us, it became about the religion of Christ. How do we redo that, all the stuff? And Paul has been the greatest exponent of that, because if you think about it as well, the reason why we have the New Testament today, the reason why we have the Christian Bible the way it is, in part, is due to Paul, because all the documents that have survived Christ, I don't know if you know this, but all the books in the New Testament, they're all found in Greek, which means that they were written by people who were not necessarily Jewish at the time. They are transcriptions of transcriptions. And we would only have people outside of Judaism writing about Christianity, about Christ, and about everything else because of Paul. Because Paul went to talk to a bunch of different people. He went to take that message outside of Judaism. That's why he's called the Apostle of the Gentiles. In fact, he's done so much travels that would put to shame even the most prolific frequent flyers today. And you got to remind you, You got to remember, there were no planes here, so it's all by boat and foot, right? And he traveled the world many times over the known world at the time. So he no doubt did some amazing feats. He accomplished so many things. He spoke to so many people in his life. And sometimes that leads us to think of him as Saint Paul, this incredible person who lends his name to cities, to cathedrals, to works of art, to all these kinds of things. And it gives us an impression sometimes that he was born that way, that he was just cut from a special cloth, that he's almost like a separate being altogether, that just got it all right from the beginning. And that is not true, because before Paul was Paul, he was first Saul, right? So Saul was a very devoted, very driven young man who really believed in God and in the idea of the Jewish faith, and did whatever he could to be the best that he could at it. And you also have to remember that at that point in time, in Judea, in Jerusalem, there was no distinction between religions and government, basically, for the Jewish people. So to obey the law of Moses was the rule of the land. And so Paul, as a young man who was smart, who was intelligent, and who was driven, who was athletic, who had everything going for him, climbed through the ranks, and at an early age attained the greatest status that one could hope for at the time, which was to be a member of the Sanhedrin, the Jewish body of law. And so what we really find here is a young man who is a workaholic, who is really dedicated to his life, who is heart and mind into this, and who spends his entire days thinking about how to preserve and how to make sure that the law of Moses, that the teachings of Moses, of Judaism in general, are retained, are honored, and are safeguarded. So it is no surprise that when this new cult, this new way of thinking starts to emerge, that he's then going to go ahead and tries to quash it. And that's exactly what happened after the passing of Christ, after his crucifixion. This new group of Christians started to arise. They weren't even known as Christians at the time, but it seems like a cult. These people who were abandoning the Jewish faith. And Saul, as a good debater, as a good argumenter, as a good dialoguer, would often go and try to catch those people on a slip and have debates with them and show them that that was not the right way. The right way was to remain Jewish. And through a lot of different stories, right, a lot of different developments and a lot of different happenings, we find him on the road to Damascus. And that is an important part of his life. So, of course, it's a short part of his life, but an important one, nevertheless, that we want to kind of unfold a little bit more. And I want to talk to you about that as we make the same road, so to speak, this figurative journey that he did to Damascus. But before that, I want to tell you a little bit about this actual passage, right, where he's actually traveling from Jerusalem to Damascus in Syria, and why he's doing that. I should preface that by saying that you can hear a much better narration, no doubt, in this wonderful book, Paul and Stephen, by the medium Francis Xavier, by the Spirit Emmanuel, which really give us an insight into the life of Paul. But even in that book, that passage is really small because it is a short passage, but it is a very symbolic one. It's a very transformative one. And in it, we find our friend Saul on a road, much like the one you might be seeing on screen, because that's actually a shot from the desert, from Jerusalem to Damascus. And why? Why was Paul going to Damascus? Well, Paul was going to Damascus in Syria in search of a man, Ananias, a man who was a early Christian preacher, who was also gathering more and more people and helping them convert from Judaism to Christianity, or to nascent Christianity, to the early Christian thought and belief. And Paul would not have any of that. Now, there's also a personal connection there. And the reason why this was so important to him to go after Ananias or any other preacher, but especially Ananias, was because Ananias had converted Abigail, the woman whom he loved. And it's an interesting story. It's a very convoluted, complex story, almost like a soap opera, the love story between Paul and Abigail. But suffice it to say that that Abigail eventually got sick and passed away, and Paul was away when for a lot of the time when that happens, and then he learns that when he finally sees her and she is about to pass away, she says that she's been transformed and has accepted Christianity as well. So you might imagine the hurt and the ego, the blast that Paul took when he heard from the woman that he loved the most that she too had converted to Christianity. And then she passes away, and he comes to learn that she was converted to Christianity, between quotes, by this man named Ananias, who introduced her to the stories of the Christ. And so he goes after him, perhaps trying to channel all his anger and his frustration, and also do his job. So what I find it interesting is that we find Paul on the road to Damascus after having asked the Sanhedrin, the Jewish body of law, permission to go and fetch Ananias. And so he finds himself on a road such as this one, and it's about 150 miles away from Jerusalem, from Jerusalem to Syria. So it's a long journey. And you have to remember, we don't have hotels at the time. We don't have drive-thrus. We don't have cars. We don't have concession stands. We don't have a lot of things along the way. So it is a pretty long journey. It's one that you generally don't take by yourself, right? Because it's also dangerous. You don't know what you're going to find along the way. You have to carry your own food. So he's got a group of people. And in that wonderful book, Paul and Stephen, we are told that he has 3 other helpers with him who are helping him carry. And, you know, when you do that, it becomes an expedition, right? You also have to have horses and food and so forth. So they've been walking for a while, and it's probably about a 1 to 2 week journey. And the story goes, according to the Acts of the Apostles, which is that wonderful book in the New Testament, that almost at Damascus, an interesting thing happens. After they've been on a road for a while, a shimmery light appears. And Paul is taken by that shimmery light in such a way that it blinds him in such a way that he actually falls down off his horse into the floor. And you can imagine how painful that is. And in that moment, he realizes there's a presence there with him. And after he asks who that is, this light, this presence, announces itself as being Jesus, the very thing that he was persecuting. And you might also know the very famous dialogue that, although short, comes of it, in which Paul asks, who is there? Jesus says, it's Jesus. And in that moment, taken by the certainty that something special, almost magical was happening, Paul asks the question, Lord, what would you want of me? What would you have me do? And Jesus replies that he should go to Damascus and wait for more news. And when Paul returns to himself, when the light is no longer there, he realizes that he's on the floor hurting because he just fell off his horse, but that he's also blind. He can no longer see. And you can also imagine his friends around him wondering what happened, because here's the kicker, people. Only Paul had that experience. He was the only one that in that journey saw that light, fell off his horse, and had a mystical encounter. And you can also imagine that his friends around him, all the people that worked for him, probably thought that there was too much sun on his head, right? That he hadn't drunk enough liquids, that he was dehydrated. And then after being for days at an end in the desert, he just had an hallucination and fell down and hurt himself. And now they are worried about him, and they want to go back. They want to take him back to Jerusalem. But he will have none of that. He needs to go forward to Jerusalem because he heard that voice telling him to do that. And in right in that moment, he has to make a decision. Will he go back to Jerusalem, get reacquainted with everything he knows, or will he go forward to Damascus? And you can imagine how challenging that decision is. It turns out that he goes to Damascus. He gets there. He seeks shelter amongst the people that he knew, because after all, remember, there are no hotels at that point in time. It was very customary for you to stay in other people's house, especially somebody of Saul's stature, somebody who's a political figure who's really well known. Everybody would fight over the right to host him, because it would be a great honor to have such a person in your house. But as Saul starts to tell people about this experience that he has had and how he's now intrigued and wants to know about Jesus, this prophet who has done this incredible thing to him, they start closing his doors on him. They don't want to be associated with this new Jesus thing. They are very well put in where they are. They are worried about the political implications of them hosting somebody who is openly talking in favor of Jesus. So we find Paul, or Saul at that point in time, alone in Damascus, basically abandoned by his friends without a place to stay. And the interesting thing is, he eventually finds an inn, my friends. An inn at that time was a spare room in somebody's house, but more probably a spare room in somebody's business. He goes there in a street called Straight, according to the Acts of the Apostle. He has one person with him. The other two were sent back to tell the people in Jerusalem what's happened. He goes there and he stays for 3 days without eating or drinking, according to him. Just waiting for something to happen. Imagine that. You're just blind. You don't know what's happening. You're taking a new turn in your life, and you're just waiting. He eventually sends his other companion back, so he's really by himself. And much to our surprise, after a while, guess who has come in to help him? Ananias, the very person he was persecuting, had his own vision with the Christ, in which the Christ told him, go to this street, the street called Straight. In there is an inn. Find Saul of Tarsus, and then heal him. And you can imagine that conversation with Ananias too, right? Lord, Saul, that guy that has been capturing, imprisoning, and killing people, you want me to go and help him? Yes. And then he goes. So a testament to Ananias' faith too, where he obeys his calling and goes, and the rest I think we all know. He goes there, he basically gives passes to Paul, and as if scales fell from Paul's eye, he gets to see again, and his journey as a new reformed Christian, so to speak, begins. So goes the story, right? It seems like a fantastical story, but I think in it, we have 7 wonderful items for reflection that we want to talk about. We want to pluck 7 different things and 7 different symbols that I think can apply to our lives, because that's a story that happened 2,000 years ago, right? And that's a beautiful story if we have eyes to see it. Pun somewhat intended here, because if we were to translate to today's terms, to make it more actionable for us, we can say that Paul, or Saul, so to speak, was a very successful young man who had everything going for him, who had just suffered a terrible loss. The woman that he loved had passed away. And he dove in even deeper into his work. And while he is on an important business trip to really make things right, something happens. And he has his entire life questioned by this magical or mystical encounter that he has. And now he has a decision to make. Should he quit his job? Should he stop everything that he has done before and change gears because that no longer suits him? How does he change his life? What does he do? After all, it's just a whim. It's just a one moment. How does he act on it? How does that impact him? Should he leave everything that he has known before behind to try something new? Or should he stay where he is? And so I think this is a really important question, because once we frame in this slightly different ways than we're accustomed to, we can see that the wisdom of the gospel is made more apparent. We can see that the stories that we have heard 2,000 years ago are really very modern. They're very contemporary because they speak to challenges that we have right now. The challenges of deciding, what do we do with our lives? Do we leave our past behind? How do we do it? How do we juggle the challenges of the physical world? How do we change ourselves? And what does it mean to go through that change? And these are beautiful moments of questioning, because the truth is, almost all of us nowadays are thinking about it in some way, shape, or form. I've heard so many people tell me that they are struggling with their life, with meaning and purpose, that they don't know what they want to be, that they don't know if this job is right for them, they don't know if this life is right for them, they don't know if they're in the right place. And I think all of that is true and wonderful. And if we have Saul's or Paul's experience with us, we can frame it in a way that we can understand the parts of the journey because we know the beginning, the middle, and end of that journey. And if we are able to place ourselves in that spectrum, we might gather some tips from Paul, how to process all these difficult challenges and go through change. And so, of course, there's a lot more in the book because, you get to spend a lot more time with a book if you want to. But I wanted to share with you briefly these 7 items for reflection and these different 7 items that we go into to reflect upon how to change and how to face all these challenges. Does that make sense? I just want to check in with here. If I am able to, contain myself and not get excited about this and keep talking forever, I hope to have some time for us to chat a little bit, as well, and exchange comments and questions. All right, so let's dive in here. So the first lesson that I think we take from Paul's journey is that he was in a group, but he was also alone. And why do I say that? Remember, he had 3 other people with him in the journey as he went forward. Yet, he was the only one that experienced that encounter with Jesus or the apparition of Jesus in that moment. And I think that's very telling for us because it reminds us that although we go through life with friends and families and loved ones and groups, spiritual calling, this calling for change, is an individual one. And it happens to us in a timing that is different than those around us. So it's really hard because sometimes we feel alone because we are called to change. Something happens and we wish people around us understood. And we wish they were going through the same thing at the same time. But that's seldom the case. The truth is, friends, that most of the time, we are the ones undergoing change and the people around us just don't understand what we are going through. They're unaware of what we're going through. And in fact, they sometimes might ask us not to change. They might not understand why we are all of a sudden changing our behavior. Why all of a sudden we want to change our jobs. Why all of a sudden we are spending more time at the Spiritist group. All of a sudden we are talking about doing something different in our lives. Why all of a sudden we want to go help other people over there when we could be spending time with our family. There's all these new things that start to kind of blossom in our hearts, and the people around us might not understand. It might be slightly different for them from the person that we were before. And that's an interesting piece because it's only natural that we feel alone, that we feel misunderstood or not understood, that we feel that those around us may not comprehend what's really happening. And that's a difficult reality. Right? And I think we see that a lot in the world where we feel that nobody else understands us. And that hits right here in the heart and stuff. But the good news is, if we look at Paul, friends, we will know that if you find yourself at that point in time or any point in time feeling like, pardon me, feeling like you're going through change and no one around you understands, it doesn't mean that you are abandoned on the road. It just means that you have started in your journey to change. You are in the first step because change is a personal endeavor. Change is something that happens by yourself. Nobody can change you but yourselves. And so because it is an individual sport, so to say, you have to go it by yourselves. You have to make your own choices. You have to make your own decisions. And that feels lonely sometimes. That feels hard. But if you're there, if you're finding yourself in a place where you think that things are really hard because you're by yourself, you're having to make all these decisions and nobody understands you, that's not a bad thing itself. If we look at Paul, that's the presage, that's a sign that you are embarking in this wonderful moment of change, in this wonderful movement forward towards something new. So I think that's one of the 7 lessons that we get from Paul that we ought to keep near our heart. And as we shift gears, let's go to the second one. And we can always dive deeper later if we want to. The second lesson that we also take from Paul is that he has a destabilizing meeting with the Christ. You see, his opportunity for growth doesn't come from little angels coming from heavens playing harp, and the sky opening up and the ray of light coming down and beautiful music celebrating himself, and then his whisk to heaven and everything is perfect. His opportunity to change comes from painful moments, destabilizing moments. He sees the light. He sees that new information, that new reality in front of him, and he's so powerful that knocks him off his horse. He literally falls onto the ground. And if you ever fallen from a horse, and I have, it hurts, right? So sometimes it's good for us to know that the most beautiful opportunities for growth in our lives come through different moments when we have to change the way we are going. So if by any chance you are faced with a really difficult situation, a curveball, some situation that presented itself that you were not expecting, that literally knocked you on your butt, on your tushy, know that this is not the universe telling you that you're not good enough, or that you don't deserve things, or that you're not a good person. It's actually just the way the universe redirects you to make sure that you don't keep going down the same path that you were going down before, because that's going to do you more harm in the long future. So when we have all these pointers away, say, do things differently, and we don't hear them, eventually the universe sends something stronger to really catch our attention. And sometimes these are difficult situations that really make us to change the way we think and change the way we live. So if you find yourself in such a moment where you have been dealt a really hard blow, perhaps you've lost your job not because of your own desire, perhaps you lost a loved one, perhaps you have a change upon in front of you that you're forced to do that you didn't like. What's the lesson there? Because something was shown to you so that you could redirect and have an opportunity for growth. Because after all, if you truly believe in God, and I think most of us here do today, you will also know that God is a loving God. And God will never throw you an obstacle that you cannot overcome. Because otherwise, that would be a mean God to give you something that you cannot handle. And if God were a mean God, God would not be God by definition. So everything that comes your way, every challenge that comes away is in fact a calling for you to grow in a specific way. And is a certainty that you can in fact grow. It's a complement to your ability to solve the problem. It's actually a compliment to you so that you know that you can overcome that and grow. But it's important for us to notice that sometimes change comes through hardship. Change comes through difficult moments. So if you're going through one now, don't feel like that's a punishment. Feel like that's an opportunity for growth. And ask yourselves, what is the opportunity for growth here? How can we grow? So that's one of the lessons that we take from this opportunity to revisit Paul's story. And of course, we unpack this, deeper in the book, and we go through more details. But I want you to have at least the encapsulating details here, at least the summary of all these things, so that you can kind of see where the symbolism is going, and see. Apologies. See if that fits into your world scheme. It's possible that you might remember a really hard moment in your life before that you've gone through. And at that moment, it was really painful. But later on, you might even be grateful for the painful moment because it has led you somewhere else. It has given you a new opportunity. Are you with me so far? All right. I just want to make sure that I put all of you guys to sleep. And that's one of the good things, people, of having virtual presentations these days. People cannot boo you off the stage. That's a wonderful thing. But that's the second sign, second symbolism that we take there from Paul. Let's move on to the third one then, as we continue our journey, so that we have enough time to check and talk about it at the end of the day. The third thing that I want to call out here is the courageous question. At least that's what I call. We see Saul asking this courageous question when faced with the light that was Jesus. He asks, "Lord, what would you have me do?" And that is a fantastic question, because can I be honest with you for a second here? If it were me having that encounter with Christ, after I realized all of a sudden that perhaps all my actions for before weren't great, and all the arrests and even the deaths and punishment that have come from me to other people were not the right thing to do, I might not lead with, "What would you have me do?" I would probably have explained myself and say, hold on a second here, Christ. I just want to make sure I'm so sorry. I didn't know, but I didn't have this knowledge. I didn't know that you were really, the Christ. I would probably explain myself, find lots of excuses why I behaved the way I did, why I did that, because I just didn't know better. Please take it easy on me. But nothing like that takes place with Paul. Paul does no such thing. He realizes that his previous behaviors were not enough for him to move forward. He realizes that what has brought him to that point was not what's going to carry him further. And so he doesn't spend time belittling himself, feeling guilty. I'm sure he did feel guilty. I'm sure he did feel quite a bit of regret. But he understands that the way forward is not to be mired in the doubt and the confusion, but instead to take action and do something about it. And he also realizes that one of the most powerful men of the Judaic faith at that point in time does not know what to do. He does not know how to move forward. So he asks for help. Imagine how difficult that could have been for such an important person who had it all figured out, who had a life that most people would want to have. He had fame, he had good looks, he had a relatively, fortune. He had everything that one person could want. Good job, a good life. And yet, he didn't know what to do. And he asks for help. He asks Jesus, what should he do? That's an interesting reminder for us too, because we have to make the same kind of question if we are going to change. We have to decide if we are going to really spend time with ourselves and ask ourselves if we're willing to move forward. And what is it that we need to do? And as you know, Saul did do that. He did go through an incredible transformation, but it was only possible because he got to really question himself. And sometimes I wonder, how much time in our lives do we actually spend asking ourselves, what is it that we want to do? What is it that we truly want to do? Who do we want to be? What do we really want to accomplish? And then, whether we take action steps towards that or not. But that courageous question is one that sometimes we avoid. We spend our time, browsing the entire internet. We spend our free time, watching all of Netflix. Don't get me wrong, Netflix, great. I watch quite a bit of it. I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm saying, where is our moment for reflection? Where is our moment for really thinking about what is it that we want to be when we grow up? Right? In my case, if I grow up, what do I want to be if I grow up? Because, growing old is mandatory, but growing up is optional. Remember that. So when we grow up, so to speak, when we really try to meet our heart's desires, what is it that we want to do? And that's a wonderful and courageous question that we are reminded of through the example of Saul, that when faced with hardship, has the courage to ask himself whether he wants to change and how he should change. And let's shift gears here because of our time. But The fourth symbol or moment that I want to call up as well for our attention is a temporary blindness. You might remember, after he has the encounter with the Christ, when he comes back to himself, he's blind. He can no longer see. Imagine how difficult it is to be in the middle of a road where you cannot see. You have to depend on other people. It's a really humbling experience, isn't it? So, symbolically speaking, it is no surprise that we would experience the same kind of feelings and confusion as a newly blind person, so to speak. Because when we have this encounter with something greater, with our calling, with a spiritual awareness, with this light to change ourselves, all of a sudden, the world as we know it doesn't make sense anymore. We don't know how to read anymore. There's so much confusion. We don't know what to do. And so we're like spiritually blind for a second, where we really don't know where to go. But the good news is, if you are finding yourself in that point in time, if you are confused about the world and you think that the world makes no sense and you can't read it anymore, perhaps because something has snuck into your heart and has asked you to slightly change the way you act. Maybe you are in this phase. Maybe you are confused about what's up and what's down and what's next. And that can be very disheartening. But if we are able to zoom out for a second, we should celebrate the fact that we are changing. That confusion won't be there forever because we know what happens to Paul next, that he finds his way. So if you're confusing about life, if you're temporarily blind and you don't know where to go, don't take that as necessarily a bad thing. That is just a step in your transformative process. You are just learning to make sense of the world again. You are learning to see the world with new eyes. That happens to many of us in Spiritism when we begin to understand and learn about reincarnation and the fact that we, who we are as spirits, transcend our physical body. And when we think about that, we realize that there is little incentive for us to do everything that we want to here and now just to get satisfaction here and now because, apologies again, because we are immortal spirits. So we need to change the way we behave, because if I step on you to get what I want here and now, I'm going to have to deal with the consequences of my actions in the future. So I begin to change my behavior, and that's very confusing because the world tells me, go buy things so you feel better, right? Go use drugs so you feel better. Go get everything that you want right now so you feel better. And none of that really quenches that thirst that we have within us. When we understand that as immortal spirits that we are, that we're just temporarily here, we know that that kind of behavior, that competition that pushes other people and that hurts other people, it's not the way to go. And that's confusing because then we ask ourselves, but hold on a second, everybody's doing that. What do? I don't know what to do anymore. So if you are in that spot, if you're confused about where to go and you don't make sense of this world anymore, then maybe you're in that phase of temporary blindness. But the good news is there's more to come. And let's shift gears really quickly, because otherwise I'll talk forever and you won't be able to put up with me. So the fifth symbol here that I want to talk about is this decision to go ahead. And this is a crucial moment. Imagine Saul was on the road after having the vision, fallen from his horse, and blind. He has to make a decision. Does he go back to Jerusalem, where he lived, where he had friends, where he had more doctors and people to help him? Or does he go ahead anyways because he heard he should? And it's a really beautiful symbolism here, because Jerusalem symbolizes, in this case, everything that we were before in our way of living. And Damascus symbolizes everything that's new and different that we are not aware of or not sure of. And in that moment, he's called to choose. Do I go back to being who I was before? Or do I go forward into something new, into the unknown, to change myself? And that's a scary choice. And that, my friends, is a scary choice. Because to let go of the way we were before is very hard. Most of the times, we just want to first get where we're going to then let go of where we came from. But the truth is, sometimes, or most of the time, we have to let go of the old to make space for the new. We don't get to let go of the old after we got the new. We have to do it before. And changing the way we are is hard because we have to let go of certain things. We have to do things differently. And so in that moment, he had to make a decision. And we too have to make a decision. Do we want to go back to the way life was before? Or do we want to go forward and do something new? Oftentimes we tell ourselves, right? Oh, no, I am going to just go back. And when I have time later on, I will do this. When I retire, I will focus on this. When I do this, I will focus on that. When I can later, I will do this. But these are just things we tell ourselves because we don't know what tomorrow looks like. We just tell those things to ourselves so we can feel better about postponing our decision. But we have to make the decision. And we have to figure it out whether we are making our decisions out of comfort or our conviction. And that's an important delineator there. Do we make our decisions because we want to go back to the comfort that we had or because we believe that those are the right things to do? And in this moment in our society, we are in such a collective point, aren't we? We've been in the middle of this pandemic, and I hear a lot of people saying, I just wish we could go back to the way it was before. But the truth is, friends, if you really think about it, the way it was before wasn't working for everybody. So can we go forward instead? Can we craft a new existence for all of us? What is it from this moment in our history, in our lives, are we going to choose to let go of? And what are the things that we are going to carry forward into this new reality that will be a post-pandemic world? These are powerful thoughts for us. Are we going to choose the comfort of what we had before, even if it wasn't working for everybody? Or are we going to make a change and choose something different for all of us moving forward? Questions for us to think about. That's the fifth symbolism. But don't worry, if we're thinking that was all hardship until now, I want to celebrate the sixth one, because I think we forget about this in the moment of our confusion and searching for meaning, and that we get unexpected help. Remember when Saul was in that little room by himself for a while, blind, waiting for something to happen? Something happens. The Christ sends him a helper, and that is Ananias, who goes and helps him see again. And isn't it interesting and symbolic that the very thing that Paul was persecuting was the thing that helped him the most? And isn't it wonderful as well that for him to receive that help in that place and time, divinity, the good spirits, our mentors and guides, know exactly where we have been and where we are going to be. And they send us that help. And if we stop to think about it, the only way Ananias knew how to find Paul was because Jesus was keeping tabs on Paul all along. So he was able to tell him, go into that room, into that place, and find him and help him. And that should bring us some sort of fortitude to our hearts, because we sometimes forget that God, the good spirits, know where we are at all times, that we are truly never alone. We may feel alone, but we always get the help we need. And it's sent before we need it. And it arrives at the right time. But the question that remains is, can we recognize the help that's being sent to us? Who is our Ananias? Who is your Ananias? Who is the person or the thing or the situation or the event or the challenger or the trials and tribulations that are helping you see things differently and make the change? They're there. They're always there. But what is it? Interesting questions for us to reflect upon as well. And because we want to make sure we have time to talk, we want to move forward here a little bit as well to the seventh symbol. I can't use my mouth today, my friends. I think it's my first day with my new mouth. For some reason, it doesn't want to speak normally. So thank you for your patience there. But the seventh symbolism that we want to visit here is this different Damascus. Think here with me. When Saul set out on his journey to Damascus, he was hoping to achieve something, to accomplish something, to be something. But once he got there, he was a very changed person. So the Damascus that he thought he was going to arrive at and the one in which he did are fundamentally different, yet they are the same. Isn't that poetic? And I wonder if that doesn't apply to us as well. Sometimes the goals, the objectives we have for ourselves in our lives change with time. And when we achieve them or get close to them, we realize they no longer are those things that we wanted them to be. Maybe our goal was to have a beautiful home or have financial stability or be famous or what have you. But once we got there, we realize that those things are not important anymore, or they're not as we expected, and that they haven't brought us the satisfaction that we wanted to. And so it begs the question, how often are we reevaluating our goals in lives? What are our goals in lives? What are our objectives? What is our Damascus? Because it changes, and it's okay for it to change too. So if you find yourself rethinking out your goals, don't think that's a failure on your end. Quite the opposite. It's wonderful that you're reevaluating what is it that you want for life. You don't have to have everything figured out at once. Saul thought he had everything figured out, and then halfway through it, something happened and makes him rethink everything, and he no longer knows where he's going. It's okay for that to be the path we take in life too. Of course, it's always wonderful to have a plan, but if you don't have everything figured out just yet, don't feel like you're the only person in the universe who doesn't. Because I think this is one of our secrets, right? We often think that everybody else has everything else figured out, and we are the only ones who don't have our act together. But the truth is, nobody has their act together. We're all on the road trying to figure out where to go and how to get there. And that's an interesting perspective. But I say that because once we take that perspective from Paul, once we see his journey through all these 7 symbols, for instance, of course there could be more, but let's keep it at 7. If we take his perspective and if we see the road ahead, and we can place ourselves in one of those stages, we can realize that we're not abandoned, we're not forgotten, we're just in the middle of a process of enlightenment, right? Because if we understand that we live together in a group, but we have to make our decisions alone, we have taken a step forward. If we find ourselves in a really difficult moment of our lives, a destabilizing moment that has happened, we can remind ourselves that we have not lost our way, that this is just an obstacle on the way, that this is how we grow, that difficult challenges are opportunities for growth, and that we can and we will overcome them. But it's important for us to also have the courage to ask the question, what is it that we want to do? What is it that we are going to have to do because our minds and our hearts compel us, and not our bodies, not our physical existence. We have to think with our spiritual selves. What is it that's best for me, spiritually speaking? That's a hard shift. And that sometimes can be very confusing. We can experience the same kind of blindness that Paul experienced when the world that he lived in no longer made sense as he was. And he decided to do a major change and leave everything behind. I'm not quite sure that we need to go as extremely as he has, which is good for us. But that change is possible, that we can leave our old selves behind and begin anew. And that's the decision that we are going to have to make. That's a key moment when we are faced with a challenge, when we're confused. We're going to have to decide whether we move forward or we retreat back into our old selves. Will we go back to Jerusalem to comfort? Or we are going to say, even though I don't know the way, even though I am confused and blind, so to speak, I am going to keep moving forward. The answer, of course, is always of our own creation. But it may be the case that if we do not choose to move forward, if we go back to Jerusalem, eventually we are going to have to make the same way back. and make that same decision again. So if you find ourselves coming across the same challenges in our lives over and over again, then maybe it's time for us to consider whether we have been making the choice to go back to Jerusalem, so to speak, the choice to stay in comfort rather than choose conviction of trying something new, something that we know is right. These are moments for reflection for us. But once we make that decision to go ahead, it's important not to forget that we always have support from the spiritual realm, that we always get the unexpected help. It might not be what we expect. It might not come from where we expect, but we always get the help we need to see again, to make sense of the world, much the same way Paul did. And we always get to reimagine where our end goal is. We always get to think about what our Damascus is. And when we do that, we arrive at an interesting realization, friends. We realize, as we think about ourselves, spiritually speaking, that what we are and who we are is going to outlive all these challenges that we have. In fact, it's going to outlive even this physical life. And we understand this beautiful quote in the Gospel of John a little bit better when Jesus tells us, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, even though they die, will live. And whoever lives by believing in me shall never die. Do you believe this? And what does that mean? And you might have noticed the picture there. I put a different picture of Jesus to symbolize the change of seeing things different than we're used to. That Jesus is saying that if we believe in his teachings, because he had no ego, so it's not about him, it's about what he symbolizes. If we understand his spiritual teachings about life after life, then whoever believes in these ideas, even though we die, we will live, because there is physical death, but there is no spiritual death. And whoever lives by believing in me shall never die. So if we live our lives understanding that we go on and we have multiple lives, we will never truly experience death, because we will know from now that we are immortal spirits fated to constantly evolve. And the ultimate question is, do you believe this? Do we believe this? Can we make that into our lives? And that is a wonderful moment for us to reflect and think about, to really consider all of this. And then I pause because, oh my goodness, I talk so much, right? But I hope that you may consider Paul's example of change for your lives, and that you may think about whether that can be something that helps you when you are feeling a little bit down and makes sense of your lives.
Thank you, Dan, very much for the very profound thoughts there, and very comforting, reminders of the fact that we have so much help along this journey. We do have a few questions here. I know we are strapped for time, so let's see if we can do maybe five minutes of Q&A here. First question: is there more than one road to Damascus?
Yes, absolutely. And there might be many roads to Damascus in our own lives, right? And I think it's very right, because if you think about it, we make our own road. We decide where to go, right? And it's up to us what our Damascus is. We can change directions in the middle of it. So we get to choose our own Damascus. And we also get to appreciate that the people around us might walk on the road with us for a little bit, but they're also on their own road to Damascus. And so we also have to be respectful of that and enjoy that. Maybe we cross paths for a little bit. Maybe we're in the same road for a little bit, but we also have to respect that they too have to choose their own way. And their road to Damascus might be slightly different than yours. They might take a turn here. So we don't get to stay with them on the road all the time, because we're all going towards where we need to go, but we get to appreciate every moment that we have with them and keep them in our hearts as well.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm going to combine two questions which are very similar. So one is how to align your personal goals to God's goals. And the other one, which is similar, is what are the comparables between mapping your journey during this incarnation, career, etc., and your spiritual journey? What if they are not aligned?
My friends, you've hit the crux of the question, right? And I think that's the same question that Saul was faced with. his work, his job, right? And so to speak, the way he was going, all of a sudden did not match his new realization when he had that encounter with the light. And then he had a decision to make. Does he keep going the way his physical life was pointing him? Does he continue to be the defender of the Jewish faith? Does he continue to persecute Christians? Does he continue to continue to keep on as he was keeping on? Or does he make a change? And I think that's an answer that only us can say. That is a hard change, my friends. When we realize that which we want and that which we are doing are not in alignment. And so that's when we have to make that courageous question. That's when we have to make that choice. Do we go back to comfort, or do we make a change out of conviction that I talked about, right? Do we change to what we believe is most important, a spiritual life? Or do we say, you know what, I'm just going to keep my comfortable life as it is because I have to? And these are very troublesome questions, right? Because, my goodness, do you leave your job, your life, your relationship, your city, your hobbies, whatever it is that's dear to you? You've done it for a while, so it's hard to leave behind. So the question becomes, how can we align things? I think in Paul's case, we agree that it worked out well for him. So it bodes well for us, but it was not necessarily easy, right? So I think it's important for us to recognize that as well, that we have to decide, how do we align those two things? And I think that's the calling of our lives, is to figure it out, which way do we need to go. Sometimes people tell me, oh, I wish I knew what my mission was, what my path in life was. Well, what if our mission, and what if our goal, objective in this lifetime is to figure out what we are going to do, right? What if it's not about just having something exactly that we have to do or hit? What is it deciding what's most important to us? We have the opportunity to do that, and that's a really hard change. And so I think we're all on the same boat, or I should say on the same road there, friend. We're all trying to figure out, or should be trying to figure out, how do we align ourselves with that which we believe and that what we are doing.
Thank you very much, Dan. I know there are more questions, but in respect of your time and our participants' time, I'm gonna respectfully ask that we pause here. You gave us so much to think about, and we're gonna talk about the book in a second here. So I will ask Claudia, our friend Claudia Oliveira, to do the final prayer and then the announcement. So thank you, Dan, and thank you, Claudinha.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Edu. Now, dear friends, let's close our eyes. Let us raise our thoughts and intentions to God, our Father. We praise you, God, our Father, for your infinite kindness and mercy. We thank Jesus, our Master and our guide, for his teachings, for his gospel, that serves as a guide for our lives. And in this feeling of gratitude, let us unite our hearts together and thank the Sunrise spiritual mentors, as well as all of its workers, and visitors here today. We thank our own spiritual mentors who are always by our side, helping us, giving us courage, inspiring us every day. We are grateful for our family, for our work, for our road to Damascus, for our physical bodies, and for the fabulous opportunity of incarnation, this process that can lead us to our own journey, to our own improvement, and our advance in the law of progress. Support us, Lord. Support all the sick, the suffering, and the forgotten. Fill their hearts with the hope of love. We ask, Father, to renew the purpose of good in us, and that we can always help our brothers and sisters. We ask you for our planet, especially for Brazil, which is going through such a difficult time now. We ask that we can have better days. We also ask for family and friends. May everyone receive the divine protection and feel involved in the sweet vibrations of love. May Jesus be our company. May he give us good cheer, joy to live, and strength to believe in an even better tomorrow. So be it.
So be it. Thank you, Claudinha.
Now, if you guys give me just a couple more minutes, I'm sharing my screen. Can you see, Edu?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. All right. So first, we would like to say thank you to Dr. Dan for the wonderful message this morning. And we said in the beginning, but in case some of you miss our beginning, we welcome all of you that are here for the first time, and we invite you to take a look at our website and our calendar to see the other activities that we offer. On Sundays, we also have the children and youth education that also happens between 10:30 and 11:30, but on a different virtual room. Today, our teens are actually here with us on this room. But on other Sundays, we have a virtual classroom for the children and another virtual classroom for the teens. And we also offer other studies and assistance during the week. So on this first slide, we're going to talk about Dr. Dan's book. If for all of you that loved the talk today and would like to know more, you can purchase his book. His website is over here. It's very easy, danassisi.com. And through the website, you can purchase the book. You can sign up for the newsletter. Imagine such a great talk today. Imagine the newsletter, right? And you can also see his past posts on the blog. So this slide and the link will also be available on our website, and our social media is going to be under our message board, okay? Our second slide, we're going to talk about our current volunteer activities. It's our April volunteer work, which will be to help the Formiguinhas program. Well, if you don't know, Formiguinhas means ants in Portuguese. The Formiguinhas was started by Raquel Marshall. She's a Brazilian that lives here in Houston. She started the program in 2019 with the goal of raising donations and helping the Houston homeless, the street population. Since then, the Formiguinhas have provided many meals and service for this population. And one of their goals is actually to take them out of the street, right? To help them find their path to Damascus. So how can you help? So you can help by donating some items, clothing, food, drinks, and some items from the Amazon list. This list is also going to be available on our website under volunteering, and will also be posted on our social media. Volunteering, you can also help volunteering to make the food that's delivered on that Sunday, and going on the delivery day, or even providing some service for the homeless. We had a person that was the owner of a beauty salon. She did a Princess Day for the homeless people, for the ladies. So, but for more details, please contact Raquel on this phone, and she will tell you how to help. Here are just some quick photos to see part of this work. This week, we already had some donations from Sunrise arriving at her house. We had some pots and pans, some feminine products. During the winter storm, they were able to put some of the homeless people in a hotel. So this is going to be our project for April. And last but not least, we would like to invite all of you that are here today to come back to our next Talk in English, which is going to be April 11th, which is just 2 weeks away, at the same time, 10:30 Central Time. And our next guest is going to be Luis Lima, and the topic will be the aspects of divine justice. Well, that's all for today.
Well, 1 second. Let me ask then, are we doing the book drawing?
Oh, yes.
So we're gonna do a drawing here quickly. For those of you who stayed with us so far, let me run. We have a little application here. Let me share, and you're gonna get a copy of the book. So bear with me. Can everybody see here? So if you can see, what is it? I think it's this one. Okay. So I'm going to click 3 times, and this program is going to pick whoever is at the top of the list is going to win the book. I'm going to do it 3 times. Okay. I'm going to do the first time so that you know how it works. So it picked Tatiani, but not you yet. I'm going to click it again the second time so that you know it's not always the same person. And now I'm going to click it, and whoever is at the top gets the book. And that is Fabiana Morales. So you got a book. Please send us an email, and we will, we will send you the book, right? Dan, is this how it works?
Yeah, it works. And can we get fancy, Eduardo? Can we ask her too? Does she want a hard copy or does she want paperback or Kindle? She's got a choice. Three choices, right?
Absolutely. So Fabian, you can tell us how you want the book to be delivered, and we'll send you the book in
and
whatever format it works.
Yep, and if you want me to sign it, I'm glad to do that. Right, whatever you prefer. And Eduardo, you okay if we do a second one? Why not? I have 2 copies here, so
a second one. Okay, so Fabiana
does that work?
is one, of course. Let me do it then. So if you can see, I'm going to click one more time, and whoever is at the top gets the second book, and that is Valmar Dominguez. Got a copy of the book as well. There you go, Valmar. Very good.
And I'm sorry.
Okay, so again, you can choose whichever format you prefer, and they are asking for an Audible book as well. I think you're working on it, right? On the Audible format?
I am working on an Audible version. Yeah, it's not ready yet.
Okay, very well.
Não é agora que fala.
Okay, folks, you can just send us an email to me, Eduardo. I'm going to put my email here, and we will then send you the book. I am putting my email in a second here. In the meantime, Spiritist.org. I think that's it. Dan and everybody, thank you so very much again, Dan, for being with us today. Thank you, Claudinha. Wonderful morning here with us. Deeply grateful, and wish everybody a wonderful rest of your Sunday and a great week ahead. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Then we're going to switch to another room. I sent you the link, okay? Okay, bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.